Any new impressions from those two games?
Well, playing two teams like that, who I think both those teams are top 10 teams with age and experience, and you know, it would have been better if it was like a month from now, maybe. But regardless of when it happens, I think it's good for our team to see it. If it would happen a month ago, we might have gotten into worse habits, and so happening when it did happen allowed our guys to see things, and that's why I liked how they responded against Carolina, because I think they saw things then that night after Michigan State when we showed them some stuff that, you know, this makes sense. And then we just didn't put it 40 minutes together against Carolina, but we saw some things that were good in that game. But the glaring things that are coming out from a defensive standpoint is transition. And we've spent a lot of time on that here in the last 48 hours leading into these weekend games. Our transition defense has got to improve. The urgency to it has got to improve. And then offensively, just keeping the ball moving. We have periods of that, but we are not putting together 40 minutes of the ball moving like we like to see it move. It needs to touch hands. It needs to touch different sides of the court. It needs to go inside out. And we're all learning. You know, it's a learning curve. You know, now with Cody and obviously Moses, Jay Hill, we got some size inside, but that we've got to get that offense going, not just side to side with ball handling. It's got to go in and out, and that'll open up some more threes for us.
Defensive transition, is it mostly just guys losing guys on the way back?
Yeah, I think it's positioning. A lot of guys don't. I think a lot of young guys think I'm guarding number 2, you're guarding number 4, and now in transition, that's where we run 2 and 4. And transition is a scramble drill. So I may have to guard 4 and you have to guard 2. So it's figuring out, kind of getting back, getting the basket covered, getting the ball stopped, and then we work out from there. And then it's some guys understanding that, you know, how you run this way, it's not downhill and uphill that way. The floor's level. So it's the effort that you give coming to this end has to be the same going to the other end. So I think it's a combination of those 3 things, because we're seeing in film, we're seeing some really good growth in half-court defense, and we've got to get it to that. And so our focal point's been on what we've been doing in transition.
You mentioned all 40 minutes. That was something that Chris mentioned after the game. How do you go about doing that with guys? Well,
it's a trust. I think one of it's trust, especially offensively. When we're looking at it from an offensive standpoint, it's building that trust that across the board of the 9 to 10 guys that we're playing, they trust one another regardless of the time, regardless of the score, regardless of first half, second half. And I think that's just experience of playing with each other. And we did go through about 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks of very little contact because of our injuries. And so I think that slowed a little bit of building that trust. Now we've cranked that back up in the last week to 10 days, plus a lot of games. So we're hoping that, you know, we've got basically 2.5 weeks here at home with 4 really good opponents that are going to give us really good tests. It's going to be 160 minutes of great tests for us before we hit the road again. So the next 2.5 weeks are crucial academically, obviously, as we end the quarter, and it's crucial for our growth as a basketball team.
You mentioned ball movement earlier, and a lot of the times, you know, when people think of ball movement, they think about the guards, but what have you seen from the big men in terms of their passing ability?
Well, and it starts with the guards. It definitely starts with the guards because they're usually the guys bringing the ball up the court. So that's got to stay moving consistently. And like, for instance, bigs. If bigs are going to run the court and they don't get the ball, then they stop running the court, and now you got problems. You want the defense to get as far down the court to this baseline as you can, so now they have to come up. And when that happens, you get a lot of good offensive play. And you do that by running the floor and getting the ball to this area. And so many times we got inconsistency of the ball stopping way too high on the court. And we've got to get that thing moving and touching bigs. We always talk about playing inside out. You know, and that's so true. Even if our post guys touch it and it's not a post move, the ball has gotten low on the court, and now we can feed back out for spot threes. I think we've taken some more difficult threes this year, yet I want my threes to go up because we like shooting the 3 ball, but it's going to go up because of what we do in the paint. And so we've got to continue to focus on getting the ball inside and getting the ball to the rim.
I know we're still super early in the season, but do you feel with a 4-game homestand coming up, a sense of urgency to protect this home and win all those games?
Well, the urgency that I hope our team feels is that coming off of the Las Vegas Invitational, of seeing two teams that I think are high-level teams of, okay, that's what we're trying to get to. We're not there yet, and now we've got two opportunities this week. We've got 80 minutes of play with Hawaii and LMU, two really good basketball teams that we get a chance to compete against and show growth. Obviously, winning is the ultimate goal, and that's what we want. It's not. We haven't talked, in regard to your question, we haven't talked to our team about, you know, it's win 4 games or the season's over. You know, that's not what we talk about. We talk about, hey, we got smacked in the face. We learned a lot of lessons in Vegas. Now can we come back home, and in our next opponent, can I come out and see a different team, you know, just of not so much of our energy or effort. I think that's been very good. It's just been more of our concentrated mindset. And that's what is hard for young players. Young players probably struggle the most of understanding going from high school and AAU to this level of how hard you have to play consistently. And that's the hardest lesson, I think, to learn. And hopefully we learned those lessons against Carolina and Michigan State, because we had periods, second half of Michigan State, first half of Carolina, that were pretty good, but we couldn't sustain that kind of effort and that level of concentration over 40 minutes. And a lot of young players struggle learning that, and that's what we got to grow to.
How do you go about helping Jalen balance his scoring and also his passing?
Yeah, and he's a young guard, and I told him afterwards that his first half against Carolina was, as, in my opinion, as good as I've seen him. I thought he worked defensively. I thought he had 8 assists at halftime with like 1 or 2 turnovers. So he was on pace for a 16-4 game, which is incredible. And so I think it's learning. He's no different than the other guys. It's a trust factor. And I thought in the second half he got hurried up a little bit, and we had too many dribbles going nowhere. Instead of what he did in the first half, he was a downhill guy. And when he goes downhill, he's as fast and as good as anybody. So we're trying to get him going more north-south than we do east-west. And then when he gives the ball up, move, cut. He's got a habit of standing 35 feet from the basket, and I don't want that, because he can really shoot the ball. And I think that's where, if he'll learn once he gives it up, cut into areas where your man's not, and in a area where you can catch, shoot it, pass it, dribble it. And when he does that, I think his shots are going to go up, his shot percentage is going to go up, and he's going to get scoring there. But he can score in transition. There's all kinds of ways that we want him scoring the basketball. But when you're running a team, it's making sure that Wilkes is getting what he needs, and Cody and Moses and Prince and on down the line. You've got a huge responsibility when you're a point guard. That's why it's not an easy position to play. And I thought the first half against Carolina, he was tremendous. And so he's watching a lot of tape. Jay's doing a tremendous job this year of just studying it, learning it, diving into it, taking ownership of it. And I think each game he's going to continue to evolve into, I know, the player that we think he can become.
How did you get the team to play like we did against Carolina that first half, 2 halves?
Well, we've had 2 halves. We've played 2 halves very well this year, but we haven't played opponents like that. You know, obviously we think we've played good opponents, but not to the level. Carolina and Michigan State, I think, the reason why I say they're top 10, they have seniors in their starting lineups. They got juniors in their starting lineups. You got a Carolina team who's got, what, a couple guys on their team that won a national championship. I mean, just a ton of experience. Like, May hurt us in the second half. You know, Johnson goes 19-58 without scoring, and yet he scores 10 in the next 2 minutes. He's a 5th-year kid, so 5th year in the ACC. So that experience, they understand it, they get it. Sometimes our guys, they just haven't had the experience to know, hey, we just played really good 20 minutes. You know, this is good. And then there's this, they kind of exhale, and you can't exhale playing teams like that. You've got to be on point, and I think our guys learned that, and it's building the trust factor to where, like, Carolina can go nearly 20 minutes and their leading scorer not score, and yet the guys know, hey, we got to get him open, he's important to what we're doing, and now he gets 10 points in 2 minutes. And so it's stuff like that if all of a sudden we got a guy that's important to our game that's not scoring, how do we get him the ball? How do we get him a better shot? And that's just experience and being on the court at the same time. And they're learning. They're getting better, you know. And I think these 4 games are going to be crucial before we hit the road again, of just kind of seeing. That's what I want to see, where our trust factor goes in the next 2 weeks, both offensively and defensively.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it.